If you ever needed proof that America operates on its own private frequency, just look at Thanksgiving, the only holiday where people burn down their kitchens in the name of gratitude and then fight strangers for a discounted air fryer 12 hours later. What happens behind closed doors makes this stuff look downright reasonable. So buckle in, because we're not even close to the weirdest parts yet. 1. Thanksgiving is the only holiday where Americans proudly celebrate a story that basically goes, "We had a nice dinner once," and then slam the credits before the real historical plot twist. We dress kids in paper hats and cardboard feathers like we're producing a low budget historical fan fiction, and the teachers pray no child asks, "What happened after the feast?" Because that answer is not kindergarten friendly. It's the cinematic equivalent of cutting a movie right before the explosions start and calling it uplifting. Yet each year we cling to this sanitized fairy tale as if tradition requires a healthy dose of denial served with the mashed potatoes. Honestly, if cognitive dissonance were a national dish, it would be on the Thanksgiving table right next to the stuffing. 2. Turkey is the mascot of the holiday purely out of habit, not taste. It's a dry, flavorless bird with the mouthfeel of printer paper soaked in regret, yet Americans defend it like it's the crown jewel of cuisine. Nobody admits they only tolerate it because they've been emotionally blackmailed by tradition. The truth is simple: the sides carry the entire meal. Mac and cheese, iconic. Mashed potatoes, divine. Stuffing, chaotic but lovable. Turkey, a beige protein project that requires gallons of gravy just to simulate moisture. But show up with roasted chicken, and suddenly you're the anarchist who ruined Thanksgiving. We don't eat turkey because it's good. We eat it because it feels illegal not to. 3. Deep frying a turkey is the closest most Americans get to performing a live stunt. Every year, people confidently drop a frozen bird into a boiling vat of oil like they're auditioning for an explosion montage. Fire departments publish warnings. YouTube fills with disaster compilations. And still someone thinks, but I will be the exception. Seconds later, the garage is a fireball. The lawn is missing, and the family is explaining to neighbors why their house looks like a rejected Mythbusters experiment. The fried turkey trend proves one thing: Americans will always choose danger if it comes with crispy skin. 4. The presidential turkey pardon is the most bizarrely ceremonial PR event on earth. The leader of a nuclear superpower stands beside a bird like it's a visiting diplomat, reads a speech written by someone who definitely questioned their career choices, and then officially spares the turkey's life. Meanwhile, 45 million of its feathered cousins are marching toward the oven at record speed. It's the ultimate symbolic gesture, freeing one bird while its entire species faces mass culinary doom. If aliens watch this annual performance, they probably assume turkeys run the government and the president is just their spokesperson. 5. The Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade is a 3-hour marathon of giant airborne cartoon characters being dragged through Manhattan by exhausted volunteers. TV hosts call it magical, but everyone at home is really waiting for one thing: balloon chaos. A single gust of wind, and suddenly Snoopy is at a 45-degree angle. Pikachu is careening into a light pole, and 17 handlers are being pulled like background actors in a superhero finale. It's festive, yes, but in the same way, watching someone juggle chainsaws is festive. You're mostly waiting to see what goes wrong. 6. Black Friday is America shedding its polite holiday skin and revealing its true discount-hungry form. One moment we're giving thanks for what we have. Hours later, we're armed with coffee, coupons, and a willingness to commit mild assault for a marked-down blender. Stores prepare like they're hosting a controlled stampede. Barricades, maps, tactical staffing, the whole operation. People camp outside like it's a concert for slightly cheaper televisions. Nothing says gratitude like pushing a stranger into a shelf of waffle makers. 7. Thanksgiving airport travel is a full-scale simulation of human suffering. Every terminal becomes a chaos ecosystem where crying children, irritable adults, and delayed flights merge into one collective misery soup. People cling to charging outlets like it's life support. TSA lines coil into oblivion, and gate agents develop the thousand-yard stare of seasoned war veterans. Then everyone squeezes into a metal tube, breathes each other's air for 5 hours, lands, and announces, "I'm so grateful we could all be together." The emotional whiplash is breathtaking. 8. The Thanksgiving dinner table is where political debates go to die, loudly, messily, and usually with someone threatening to leave. You've got the uncle with opinions, the cousin who read one article and is now an expert, the grandma who weaponizes guilt, and the one person who insists, "Can we just enjoy the meal?" Knowing full well we cannot. It starts with pleasant conversation and ends with someone Googling statistics mid-argument while the mashed potatoes go cold. If America wanted to interrogate prisoners, they could just seat them between two relatives who disagree on taxes. 9. Cranberry sauce. The only food that openly tells you it came from a can remains undefeated. It emerges with that iconic slurp, ridges intact, and we don't even pretend to judge. We slice it like we're performing a delicate surgery, then act like this gelatinous red tube is a sacred delicacy. Homemade cranberry sauce exists, but Americans look at it like it's a conspiracy. The canned version has survived decades of culinary evolution through sheer stubborn nostalgia. It's not food, it's tradition in cylinder form. 10. Green bean casserole is the edible equivalent of a marketing brainstorm session. A food company literally invented it to sell more cream of mushroom soup, and now it's a national staple. It's beige, vaguely mushy, and somehow still gets a seat at the table every year. People defend it passionately, not because it tastes good, but because insulting it feels like insulting their childhood. The crispy onions on top are doing all the heavy lifting. Everything underneath is a warm swamp of obligation, yet no one dares challenge it. That is the power of mid-century food propaganda. 11. Stuffing is the dish that dares to ask, what if bread had a nervous breakdown? We cube it, soak it, cram it inside a raw turkey like we're smuggling carbs, cook it until it becomes a soggy bread pudding impersonator, and then call it delicious with a straight face. Every family has multiple versions because no one agrees on what it's supposed to taste like. Dry stuffing, wet stuffing, stuffing with sausage, stuffing with apples, stuffing with raisins, an actual crime. Still, we shovel it in like it's gourmet. Why? Because Thanksgiving isn't about flavor, it's about tradition and edible chaos. 12. Friendsgiving is America's unofficial escape hatch from family-induced emotional damage. Same food, better energy, no guilt trips, no interrogations about your life choices, no passive-aggressive, "you look different." Instead, it's potluck therapy with people who actually like you. Dishes get creative. Someone brings Korean BBQ stuffing. Someone else shows up with a pie that actually slaps, and everyone is chill about it. A concept absent from most family gatherings. Friendsgiving feels like Thanksgiving's cooler, emotionally stable younger sibling. 13. Overeating on Thanksgiving isn't a bad habit. It's a national sport. People train for it. They wear stretchy pants, skip breakfast, and talk about saving room like they're preparing for a marathon. You eat until you can't breathe, swear you'll never eat again, and then immediately say yes to pie. By 5 p.m., the entire country is in a synchronized food coma, passed out on couches like tranquilized zoo animals. And we call this tradition with pride. No regrets, just gravy. 14. Football on Thanksgiving exists solely to give half the household an excuse to avoid helping in the kitchen. The moment the pregame show starts, every dad, uncle, and sports-adjacent relative mysteriously loses the ability to perform basic tasks. Can you help peel potatoes? Sorry, kickoff. Meanwhile, someone else is juggling boiling pots like a culinary octopus. When dinner is finally served, the football watchers stroll in, stretch dramatically, and sigh like they've been doing hard labor instead of sitting in front of a TV for 3 hours. It's performance art, honestly. 15. Children's Thanksgiving crafts are adorable until you realize they're also historical PR. Making paper pilgrim hats and construction paper headdresses conveniently skips over, well, everything else that happened. kids come home proudly waving crafts that sanitize centuries of brutal history into a preschool art project. It's like learning about the Titanic by making a cheerful paper boat. We give kids a fun little play pretend version of the past, and then at age 16, drop the real story on them like a history jump scare. 16. Forcing everyone to go around the table and say what they're thankful for sounds wholesome, but in practice, it's emotional hostage taking. The food is getting cold, the pressure is high, and you're expected to deliver a TED talk on gratitude with zero preparation. The first few answers are touching, and then by mid circle, people are scraping the bottom of the barrel. I'm thankful for soap. Meanwhile, all anyone truly feels thankful for is when this ritual finally ends so they can eat. 17. Running a Thanksgiving kitchen is basically commanding a military operation. There's a schedule, a strategy, contingency plans, and at least one meltdown. Oven times are calculated like missile launches. Side dishes are rotated with NASA level precision. Someone is doing math on scraps of paper like a frazzled scientist. And the turkey is a ticking time bomb of temperature paranoia. After hours of stress, sweat, and culinary acrobatics, the entire feast disappears in 20 minutes. And everyone casually says, "Great meal," as if it didn't just take 3 days and part of your soul. 18. Thanksgiving leftovers are the only situation where Americans willingly eat the same meal for 4 consecutive days and call it tradition instead of culinary fatigue. We transform the turkey into sandwiches, casseroles, soups, and then some unidentifiable fridge science experiment that looks like it's plotting revenge. Every Tupperware container becomes a time capsule of poor decisions, and there's always that one optimist who says, "Don't throw it out, I'll eat it tomorrow," knowing full well tomorrow will arrive with a stomach that says, "Absolutely not." Meanwhile, the fridge becomes a Jenga tower of plastic containers that threaten to avalanche every time someone reaches for milk. But we keep doing it because throwing away food from Thanksgiving feels like betraying the holiday spirit, even when it's clear the mashed potatoes have entered a new evolutionary phase. 19. The kids' table is the greatest example of American social hierarchy disguised as whimsy. We pretend it's a fun little side zone for children, but really, it's exile with crayons. Every adult remembers the deep humiliation of being 16, practically a legal adult, and still being directed to a tiny plastic table designed for people who can't tie their shoes. Meanwhile, the adults dine like Roman emperors at the main table, discussing mortgages and cholesterol while the kids' table devolves into spilled juice, cracker dust, and arguments about who's cheating at Uno. The moment you're finally promoted to the adult table feels like entering a secret society until you discover you've only been upgraded to hearing political arguments instead of tantrums. Truly a lateral move. 20. No American holiday ritual exposes human fragility like the turkey trot, where thousands of people voluntarily wake up early to run a 5K before consuming 5,000 calories. Participants swear it's fun, but their faces say, "I regret everything." It's the one day a year when athletic overachievers drag their sleepy families into the cold to jog past spectators holding coffee in judgment. The logic is simple: burn 300 calories now so you can erase all self control later. And yet, the moment the race ends, everyone goes home and immediately undoes every bit of effort with gravy, pie, and an entire loaf of bread disguised as stuffing. The turkey trot isn't exercise, it's preemptive guilt management. 21. 1. Universal Thanksgiving truth. Someone always tries a new recipe no one asked for. It's usually a dish described with suspicious phrases like unique twist or fusion inspired, which is code for everyone will lie and say it's interesting. Maybe it's stuffing with pineapple. Maybe it's gluten-free vegan mashed potatoes that taste like a health punishment. Maybe it's a pie containing vegetables that have no business being near dessert. The chef always arrives with forced confidence, but the second they walk away, every relative gives the dish that silent, collective side eye that says, "We're not touching that." And at the end of the night, the experimental creation sits on the table, completely untouched, like a sad modern art piece made from kale and regret. 22. The family photo is the annual performance where everyone is forced to pretend they've been emotionally stable for the last 4 hours. One person is always trying to coordinate outfits as if Thanksgiving is a red carpet event, while everyone else is dressed like they rolled out of a laundry basket. There's always a baby screaming, a teenager sulking, and an uncle who refuses to put down his beer. Someone insists, let's take one more, despite the fact that the last seven looked identical except for one person blinking. And when the picture inevitably turns out terrible, mid blink faces, awkward smiles, that one cousin who looks like they're reconsidering life, the family still posts it online with a caption about cherished moments. Lies, every pixel of it. 23. The bring your specialty dish. Potluck rule is a social experiment in disappointment. Every family has that one relative who insists on making something nobody enjoys, but everyone pretends to like out of survival instincts. Then there's the person who signs up to bring rolls, the lowest effort assignment known to humankind. They stroll in with a plastic bag of store bought bread like they completed an Ironman. Meanwhile, someone else spent 9 hours basting an ungrateful turkey that will receive less praise than the room temperature dinner rolls. And when the potluck ends, all the good dishes are gone, but the cursed casserole from Cousin Janet remains untouched, radiating quiet shame from the corner of the table. 24. The wishbone tradition is one of those things that sounds whimsical until you actually analyze it. Two people hold opposite ends of a brittle bird bone, pull on it like a medieval divination ritual, and whoever gets the bigger piece wins a wish. Somehow, this never struck anyone as strange. We're all gathered around the table, smiling, while two relatives fight over avian calcium like it's a magical prophecy stick. And even when you win, the prize isn't money or glory. It's the opportunity to silently hope for something you'll forget about in an hour. The whole thing feels like a superstition invented by someone who desperately needed to justify touching bones at dinner. 25. There's always one family member whose entire personality transforms when carving the turkey. Suddenly they're a surgeon, a samurai, and a Food Network host all at once. They give a speech nobody asked for, grip the carving knife like it's a legendary weapon, and dramatically slice into the bird while insisting it's all about technique. Meanwhile, everyone else is just hungry and waiting for the edible parts. By the time the carving show is over, half the turkey looks like it lost a fight with a lawnmower, and the carver is basking in applause no one sincerely meant. It's Thanksgiving theater, all performance, zero plot. 26. The gravy situation on Thanksgiving is a high stakes balancing act. If the gravy turns out perfect, the entire meal is saved. If the gravy fails, everything else becomes a struggle meal with better lighting. One person is always whisking frantically, sweating over a saucepan like they're on the final round of a cooking competition. The moment they announce, it's thick enough, the whole room silently exhales like a bomb has been safely diffused. But if the gravy turns out lumpy, thin, or worse, flavorless, it becomes the blame magnet for the rest of the meal. Dry turkey? Blame the gravy. Bland potatoes? Blame the gravy. Existential dread? Probably also the gravy. 27. Family board games on Thanksgiving look innocent until someone suggests Monopoly, also known as the fastest way to turn a holiday gathering into a multi-generational blood feud. Every year someone swears we can play without fighting, and every year we prove that statement is a bold, delusional lie. Within 20 minutes, alliances have formed, betrayals are imminent, and one relative is furious because someone stole the property they were going to buy next. By the end, there's crying, accusations, and at least one person storming away from the table while holding a fistful of fake money like they've been financially wronged by fate itself. Nothing tests family bonds like capitalism in board game form. 28. There is always one person addicted to narrating everything happening in the kitchen as if they're hosting a live cooking show nobody subscribed to. They hover behind the cook, commenting on every step with lines like, "Ooh, that's a lot of butter," or "Are you sure the turkey isn't overcooked?" They provide zero help, contribute absolutely nothing, and somehow make the environment 10 times more stressful. Eventually, someone snaps and tells them to either help or leave, and they respond with, "Wow, I was just trying to be supportive," before wandering off to bother someone else. Truly, the unsung villains of Thanksgiving. 29. The thermostat becomes a battleground every Thanksgiving. Half the family is sweating because the oven has been running for 9 hours, while the other half is freezing because they refuse to remove their seasonally inappropriate holiday sweater. Every few minutes, someone sneaks over to adjust the temperature, and a different person immediately sneaks back to undo the change. It's a silent war fought through passive aggressive thermostat taps, with no clear victor and plenty of emotional casualties. By the end of the night, everyone is either overheated, hypothermic, or both. 30. The classic Thanksgiving nap is treated like a biological necessity, even though it's just the result of eating like a medieval king who lost a bet. People collapse on couches, chairs, floors, anywhere with gravity. The house becomes a sleep study where every adult falls unconscious with one shoe on, the TV playing football at high volume, and a plate of unfinished dessert cooling next to them. And without fail, someone insists they're just resting their eyes, despite the fact that they are clearly in REM sleep and probably dreaming about mashed potatoes chasing them through a cornfield. 31. There's always that one relative who decides Thanksgiving is the perfect time to share a personal project nobody asked to hear about. A pyramid scheme, a self published novel, a new diet, essential oils, crypto, you name it. They wait until the whole family is trapped at the table, then unleash a monologue that feels like a hostage negotiation. Everyone nods with the dead eyed politeness of people trying not to provoke the situation. And when they finally finish, there's a heavy silence as everyone debates whether they've suffered enough to deserve pie. 32. No matter how big the dining table is, Thanksgiving proves it will never be big enough. There are always too many people, too many dishes, and not enough elbow room to eat comfortably. Someone inevitably ends up with a chair 2 inches lower than everyone else's, forcing them to eat like they're at the kids' table again. Someone else gets stuck in the corner, trapped until half the guests leave, or someone physically drags the table away from the wall. And every year, someone says, "Next year, we'll get a bigger table," knowing full well they absolutely will not. 33. The kitchen timer becomes a tyrant during Thanksgiving. Every few minutes it screeches, sending someone sprinting across the room like a panicked lab assistant in a disaster movie. There are timers for the turkey, timers for the pies, timers for the potatoes, timers nobody remembers setting but are too afraid to ignore. The constant beeping creates a soundtrack of stress that lasts all day. If you want to understand the American psyche, look no further than the way we willingly let a small plastic box control our emotions for 12 straight hours. 34. No matter the size of the gathering, someone always insists on giving a long, heartfelt toast that derails the entire meal. They stand up with a glass of wine and launch into a speech full of dramatic pauses, unnecessary metaphors, and emotional revelations that absolutely could have waited for a text message. Meanwhile, everyone else is politely smiling while thinking, "Please sit down. The rolls are getting cold." And when the toast finally ends, the table erupts in forced applause as if they've just witnessed Shakespeare instead of Cousin Carl reciting his feelings about gratitude like he's auditioning for a Hallmark movie. 35. There is always one suspiciously perfect looking dish at Thanksgiving that raises immediate red flags because nobody in the family has the culinary ability to produce it. It arrives in a pristine glass casserole dish, edges crisp, toppings symmetrical, and temperature scientifically controlled. A dish so flawless, it practically glows under the dining room light, like it has its own Instagram filter, and suddenly everyone becomes an FBI agent. Did you really make this? Where is the receipt? Show me your hands. They don't have any cooking burns. Eventually, the truth comes out. They bought it from a fancy grocery store and transferred it into their own dish like a criminal mastermind laundering baked goods. But even after the confession, everyone still eats it, because deep down, we all trust a store more than Uncle Larry's experimental seasoning choices. 36. Someone always tries to be the drink expert at Thanksgiving, proudly showing up with bottles of wine they pretend to understand. They swirl, sniff, and describe each sip with phrases like, earthy undertones of late summer plum, which is hilarious because we all know they bought the cheapest bottle with the prettiest label. And without fail, they'll offer wine pairing advice nobody asked for, like a sommelier who got their degree from a YouTube short. Meanwhile, half the table is just chugging whatever is closest to emotionally survive the evening. By dessert, the fake wine expert is tipsy, red faced, and using vocabulary like notes of gratitude in a way that would make actual winemakers flee the country out of embarrassment. But hey, at least they're entertaining. 37. The conversation at Thanksgiving always includes one family member who insists on telling long winded stories with unnecessary details that derail the meal, like a narrative hostage situation. They'll start with something simple like, "So, yesterday I went to the store," and suddenly you're 18 minutes deep into a saga about coupons, a coworker named Marjorie, a malfunctioning elevator, and a philosophical debate with a stranger about yogurt. By the time they reach the actual point, which is somehow still not relevant, half the table is contemplating faking a bathroom emergency just to escape. And when they finally finish, someone politely says, "Oh, wow," while silently praying, dessert arrived soon enough to save the room from further suffering. 38. The annual Who Made the Best Pie competition is one of the most passive aggressive sporting events in America. Three people bring homemade pies. Two more show up with store-bought pies disguised as homemade. And everyone waits for compliments like gladiators waiting for judgment. People slice tiny pieces from each one strictly for strategic voting purposes. Someone inevitably brags that their crust is all butter, no shortcuts, while someone else subtly whispers, "Well, mine is organic," as if that gives them moral superiority. It gets even worse when the pie fails: burnt crust, watery filling, collapsed structure, because then everyone must perform supportive lying. "Oh, it's rustic," or I love creative textures. No one is honest, not even once. Pie brings out the diplomats and the liars. 39. Thanksgiving also has the oblivious relative. The one who shows up 2 hours late, contributes absolutely nothing, and then demands to know why dinner isn't ready. They sweep into the house with the confidence of a celebrity entering an award show, carrying nothing except maybe a lukewarm bottle of ginger ale they bought 5 minutes earlier. They compliment nothing, criticize everything, and announce their dietary restrictions the moment the food hits the table. Then, halfway through the meal, they start packing leftovers like they earned them through emotional labor instead of just existing in the room. And next year, they'll do it all again because the family keeps enabling them like they're the Thanksgiving mascot nobody asked for. 40. There is always one person who tries to give Thanksgiving a theme, as if the holiday needs a plot twist. They'll send messages weeks in advance. "This year we're doing a rustic woodland aesthetic," or "dress like a pilgrim. It'll be fun," which, spoiler alert, it will not. Then the day arrives and the house looks like Pinterest threw up everywhere. Fake leaves, mood lighting, centerpieces made from items nobody can identify. The themed host will hover the entire evening, making sure no one ruins their Instagrammable tablescape, even though someone already spilled cranberry sauce on the burlap runner. And the worst part? After all that, the food still tastes exactly like every other Thanksgiving meal ever created. 41. Someone always claims they're just going to have a small plate this year, which is perhaps the most ambitious lie in human history. They start with tiny, polite scoops: a spoonful of potatoes, a whisper of stuffing, a shy piece of turkey. Then 5 minutes later, they get up for round two with the energy of a starving Viking raider. Round three isn't far behind. By dessert, they're hovering near the pie like a hawk guarding prey. And at the end of the night, they inevitably say something like, "Wow, I barely ate today," while visibly sweating and trying not to faint from carbohydrate overload. Thanksgiving is a holiday built entirely on denial, and this tradition proves it. 42. The helpful relative is another Thanksgiving classic. The person who insists on helping in the kitchen but only succeeds in making everything slower, messier, and exponentially more stressful. They touch everything, move everything, ask questions every 5 seconds, and hover dangerously close to hot surfaces like they're begging for an accident. They'll stir the gravy so aggressively it turns into paste, misplace utensils, reorganize drawers without permission, and somehow create more dirty dishes than the entire meal required. And when they finally get kicked out of the kitchen because the chef is about to break, they act deeply wounded, as if they were the unsung hero denied their moment of glory. Bless their heart, but also stay away from the stove. 43. Then you've got the amateur photographer who documents Thanksgiving like it's an international press event. They take pictures of the turkey from every angle, pictures of every guest, pictures of empty chairs, pictures of the dog, and a strangely artistic close up of mashed potatoes. They force everyone into group photos, standing, sitting, smiling, not smiling, one serious one silly one candid but actually posed. Half the guests look like hostages, the other half look like they regret coming. And the worst part, the photographer always says, "This is the last one," at least 7 times. Spoiler, it's never the last one. 44. The oven becomes the most overworked, abused piece of machinery in America on Thanksgiving Day. It has to handle turkey, pies, rolls, casseroles, and at least one pan of something someone forgot to defrost. The oven door opens so often it might as well be a revolving door at a mall. People argue over temperature settings like they're negotiating a nuclear treaty. The oven timer beeps so frequently it becomes background noise, like an alarm in a dystopian sci-fi film. And despite all this chaos, the oven somehow survives, only to be completely ignored for the next 364 days while everyone orders takeout. 45. Coffee on Thanksgiving night is a cultural phenomenon. People drink it not because they need the energy, but because the dessert table demands it. Someone will start brewing a giant pot of coffee for the whole family, despite only 2 people actually wanting any. Then a debate erupts about whether to make regular, decaf, flavored, or the good stuff we save for holidays. The smell of coffee fills the house, but everyone is too full to get up and pour a cup. By the time half the cups get poured, the coffee has cooled into something resembling caffeinated soup. But it doesn't matter. We drink it anyway, because nothing pairs with pumpkin pie like scalding bitter regret. 46. There is always one person who brings up the weather as if it's breaking news, no matter how intense the political argument or how chaotic the cooking crisis. They pop in with, "So, how about that cold front coming in?" It's their escape hatch, their conversational lifeboat, their emergency parachute from social discomfort. They narrate the weather like it's an Olympic sport: temperature, humidity, cloud coverage, wind speed, maybe even barometric pressure if they're feeling bold. And somehow, this incredibly boring topic becomes the glue holding the entire holiday together because everyone is secretly relieved to discuss something that won't start a fight. 47. Leafed over pie becomes a territorial war by the next morning. People sneak into the kitchen early, cutting quiet slices like thieves in a museum heist. Someone always tries to disguise how much they ate by strategically shifting the remaining pieces to make the pie look whole again. Others hide slices in the back of the fridge behind suspicious containers labeled salad that everyone knows contain no salad whatsoever. And then there's the bold relative who just eats pie for breakfast in front of everyone and calls it tradition, which honestly might be the most American thing imaginable. 48. The awkward goodbye ritual at Thanksgiving lasts longer than the actual dinner. People stand by the door for 40 minutes saying things like, "We really should do this more often," knowing they absolutely will not. Someone puts their coat on, then gets pulled into 3 more conversations. Another person tries to leave quietly, only to trigger the farewell alarm. Suddenly, the entire household is hugging them, handing them leftovers, and giving life advice they never asked for. And when they finally reach the car, they sit there in silence, mentally processing the emotional marathon they just survived. 49. Cleaning up after Thanksgiving feels like the punishment phase of the holiday. Every dish used in the entire kitchen, including some nobody remembers touching, is now dirty. Pots the size of bathtub fixtures sit in the sink like ancient artifacts. Someone tries to help by rinsing plates badly, essentially gluing food to porcelain. Plastic containers vanish into the void as leftovers multiply like bacteria. And there's always that one optimist who says, it won't take long if we all help, which is statistically the most incorrect statement of the evening. Thanksgiving cleanup is not a task, it's a trial. 50. The Thanksgiving group chat is an ongoing digital comedy show nobody asked for. It starts months early with overly enthusiastic messages, escalates into chaotic scheduling, becomes a battleground for passive aggressive logistics, just checking if anyone else is bringing rolls, then abruptly dies the day after the holiday until someone resurrects it in 11 months. People send blurry photos, unfunny memes, and questions nobody answers. One person tries to coordinate carpooling. Someone else asks if pets are allowed. And by the end, the chat looks like a transcript of a dysfunctional royal family planning a coronation using emojis and half information. 51. And finally, the most bizarre Thanksgiving fact of all. Despite the stress, the chaos, the arguments, the fires, the politics, the emotional sabotage, the turkey that tastes like seasoned drywall, and the logistical nightmare of feeding 20 people with one oven, we still do it again next year. Not because it's easy, not because it's peaceful, but because, in some twisted, uniquely American way, the dysfunction is the tradition. The chaos is the culture, the disaster is the point, and honestly, nothing proves America lives in a completely different universe more than the fact that we call all of this a holiday and look forward to repeating it like we've learned absolutely nothing. And there you have it, a full Thanksgiving tour of chaos, denial, and deeply American decision making that somehow counts as tradition. If you've survived something even dumber at your own family gathering, drop it in the comments and let the public decide who wins the holiday disaster crown. And if you want more lists of beautifully ridiculous human behavior, you know what to do. Like, subscribe, and buckle up, because the madness never actually ends.